And I can switch over if anybody's wondering about what I'm using. I like it really doesn't matter. You can paint with anything. And so I'm gonna keep it pretty basic, but you can check out this is like my general setup. I've just got some like a piece of paper, like a brush or two, 2 cups of water. Sometimes you can like rinse one out in the other, and then just some basic paints. Oh, water brushes are great too. Yeah, if you want to use water brushes, I use those a lot as well. But this is like we're gonna be doing like a pretty basic painting because it's winter here in Alaska. But I will explain more later. Oh, you're muted.
Very.
There we go.
I've got very basic setup today. I moved out of my home earlier this year and haven't picked up all my art supplies. So I'm going to be doing watercolor on an iPad with a watercolor canvas. So we will see how that goes. Everybody, hello, welcome. I'm Mariella. I've a lot of familiar names, but I don't think I've seen a lot of these faces. So hello. I'm dialing in today from Wangal Land, which is not the land I grew up on. I grew up on Gadigal Land, kind of further in the inner west in Sydney, but I've been in Wangal Land for all of this second lockdown, which has been interesting because I haven't seen kind of the beautiful places that I'm so used to being able to access. I grew up opposite a park, being able to go down to the water kind of every day. I haven't seen them for goodness knows how long. So it's been an interesting time for me, but also exploring the beauty. I'm very close to Bicentennial Park here. A lot of kind of grotty waterways, but I would take any water in this period. So it's been beautiful being on here, and I just wanted to reflect on that, as it has been interesting living on a different piece of Aboriginal land, but throughout that, what is constant is the care for country that traditional custodians have had from time immemorial. And yeah, just wanted to pay my respects to the elders, Wangal elders, Darug elders of the lands that I'm on today. And I encourage you in the chat, maybe if you want to pop whose land you're on today. And I think Max, you're coming in from Anchorage, Alaska, is that correct? Which is Denina land?
Yeah, it's Nana, and we're going to be painting a Denina landscape today, which is pretty cool spot. We're going to do it in winter, not summer, so it's pretty covered up, but still beautiful. Oh, some frozen.
Jump right into it.
All right, shall we jump? Okay, so hi, I'm Max. We're here. I'm here in Anchorage, but I am way excited today, and it looks like there's some fancy artists just based on like the fancy pictures on people's walls. I'm looking at you, Lisa, but I am way excited to do a quick sketch. We're going to be doing. This is a little sketch I made the other day. This is of right above something called Deep Lake, and it's a pretty like gorgeous how sort of everything in these landscapes really is just like light and shadow, and you kind of remove everything that's detail. So in an hour, we're gonna run through this. I'm gonna do it a little bit bigger. I'll jump over to the camera so we can kind of see the overhead. But if you have any questions, throw them in the chat, and then if somebody could read those to me. And then the plan is to kind of show a little bit of the process. So whether you've been doing painting or watercolor forever, or you're just new to it, watercolor it's a really cool medium. When I did this last sketch, I had to use gin because otherwise it would freeze. But aside from that, it's like very versatile as well. And I just love how every single time you paint something is just so different. So really excited to give you a little bit of a look inside my brain, at least the painting side.
Water glasses that are in your setup, is that correct?
2 water glasses, yeah. So generally,
gin in one of them?
No. The gin is, well, or moonshine is what I was using last time. That's usually just for painting outside in the sub-zero temperatures, just because it freezes on the paper really fast. So you can kind of see it. It creates these really interesting kind of effects, but otherwise, your brush would freeze. Like this would just be solid instantly. But today we are inside. It is nice. Sometimes I have to make a sketch outside and that's terrible, and then I come inside and make it a little bit fancier. But So the general setup here, I've got 2 water glasses, usually with watercolor. These work great, but sometimes things can get a little bit muddy. So I usually have like my rinsing glass. Oops, already getting stuff on the paper. Usually I have my rinsing glass and then my like clean water glass. Can just make stuff a little bit fancy. And then I've got a few brushes. I don't prescribe too much that it has to be like the exact same. And I'm the same with colors. This is a little art toolkit palette. We're like a little local company here. But you know, I have a yellow and an orange. I have no idea what actual colors these are. They're just, it's paint. But what I mostly focus on is if it's a cool or a warm. That's the most of anything you're gonna have to worry about is if it's cool or warm, and then we can mess with shades and all of that later. But so long as you've got like a cool and a warm, even if you don't, oops, already getting messy, it's gonna look really cool. So this is today's sketch we're gonna be messing with. So you can kind of see I have a little bit of a pen outline. Let's see if I can focus this much, can I? Oops. I can focus a little bit. And we kind of have this dark, stormy sky in the background with a little tiny person right here, just kind of for perspective is always fun. And so, oh boy, it's not focusing well. Anyway, well, I'll make it huge now. And so, without further ado, let's get started. Is this in focus right here? No, not at all, huh? How about that?
That's much better.
Much better. Okay. So I always find the start of the painting to be the scariest thing. This is perfect. It could be anything until it's ruined. And then I usually start. Already I made a little bit of a blemish. So I usually start by just, I'm going to pen in my outline. And I usually start with a little bit of a border. So I'll just be right here making a really loose border that I'll just paint within. It kind of makes stuff fancy. It's a cool little sketchbook look as well. And you can see it's really not perfect. This is a very, very, very rough line, but we don't have to worry about ruining the sheet of paper because we already did, which is great. So border, check. And then from there, I will kind of pen stuff in. If you want to use a pencil, that's totally fair game too. Some people like pencil. I like pen for kind of the boldness. And you can see even a lot of these areas I've penned in, but the watercolor covered them already. Although some people like to pen in afterwards, which is a cool look as well. But I'm going to just loosely follow this because it's mountains, and unlike faces, people don't mind too much if you mess them up. So you can kind of see, I can even zoom in here. Can I? No, I can't. Maybe I can. Nope. Funny. I can move it closer at least. I'll just do one of those. Sorry for the seasickness. Okay, and how's that? Is that focused? Yes. Okay, so with this kind of painting, oh man, let's get this right. Professionality is just going out of the window here. Okay, so with this kind of painting, what I'm going to try to do here is kind of just following the loose outline. So we've got kind of this little hill right here, goes a little bit above, a little person there. We've got this background hill. Oh, don't worry too much about whether you get this right or not. This is not going to make or break your painting. And then there was a little bit of a mountain that kind of came to the side here, and then a few mountains in the background with one more kind of up there. So pretty rough. I don't know if you can even like see much of any of that, but this is like the loose shape, and that's how I'd start any sketch in the wild as well. And then from there, I usually just kind of cross-hatch in a few of these little dark areas just to give a bit of texture. You can kind of see there's a bit right there. So what that would look like is maybe a little bit of just kind of some shading. This is absolutely not critical, as this is all going to be covered up by water. So it's really just a matter of preference. But I like to add this a little bit. It gives me, it's kind of like I'm making my own coloring book that I'm going to paint in later. So I just add a little bit in the shadow side of the mountain. And that's something key to notice as well, is where your light is coming from. So if I were to make the shadow here instead of there, your mind would pick that up. We're very good at these little details. So just kind of always aware of, where your light is hitting really helps, whether you're sketching at home or in the mountains. We had a little bit of a shadow down here. And we can add in the little person now, or we can add them in later. And I'm probably going to add them in a little bit later, just because sometimes it feels like a person can kind of make a landscape too intimidating. So I don't always like to put them in too soon. Okay, so we've got just like loose landscape here, and the scariest part is that first brush stroke for me, but kind of the same shape. But what we're going to work on now is these light shades, because with watercolors it's called subtractive. So we have all of the white is here and we're just going to slowly take it away, as opposed to like oils or acrylic, which are additive. So you could have a totally black page and you're slowly adding your color. We're going to subtract everything that's not white. So everybody feeling good where we're at? Getting some thumbs up? No thumbs down. Oh, maybe a thumbs down? Nope, a thumbs up. All right, thumbs up. Great. Although you're all Antipodean, so maybe there's our thumbs down, depending on where we're looking from it. So the next step is to get the kind of lights here. We're going to work light to dark. And so this is the scary part. That kind of lower here. So what I usually do is just like put a little bit of a light wash, and I often work backwards. So kind of like, as far away close, and then without the sky. I'll do the sky last. So I'm just going to put a little bit of water. It's just totally clear water, not too much, just a little bit, just right there. Maybe I'll put some here as well. And what I'm trying to avoid is these edges. So these edges are these crisp edges, and it's not the light that is going to capture the edge in watercolor. It's the dark that makes the edge. You're basically carving your edges. So these light ones aren't going to make it, but I want to make sure to preserve those. So I don't want to just put a giant line right across it that break the form. And so now that I have a little bit of my just pure water right here, then I go in with a bit of, I don't even know, something cool. I'm using whatever was on the palette beforehand, which appears to be a mix of blue and purple. But like I said, colors are not super important, in my opinion. I like bright, fun things, and I go way more by feel. So I'm not too worried if it's like, Azulian or Prussian or whatever the various blues are called. It's just something light and kind of blue. And then I'm going to put just a little bit here, just because I don't want this mountaintop to be pure white. Pure white is like, you only want a few things to be pure white, because that's like the brightest. So I'm just kind of trying to do a little bit of these, especially on the shadow side, a little bit of these peaks here with some of those lighter shadows, maybe where the snow just loosely is being touched by shadow, but nothing too crazy. So just adding in a few of those. You can kind of see I'm already accidentally like breaking my lines and everything. I do like it to feel like a coloring book, but I don't paint in the lines of the coloring book either. So it all kind of works out. And then I'm going to repeat that kind of down some of these as well. So we're going to work light to dark. At this point, this is sort of water and paint mix, but I'm just kind of adding a little bit of everything just to kind of give these mountains a little bit of form and shape. The nice thing with going light to dark as well is like, you don't feel like you totally lose out. If you accidentally make like a mistake or something, you can always kind of paint over it with those darker lines a little bit later, which makes life so much easier. So we're just kind of painting in a little bit, and already the landscape itself is taking shape, which is great. The lines don't really make too huge of a difference. And then we're working kind of back to front. So we've got this nice big, nice wide, kind of almost like a sledding hill right here. Paying careful attention to avoid this section right here. I don't want to be too close. And I might even make that a little bit darker, using slightly bigger brushes now because I'm running out of water with these smaller ones. But just avoiding this nice bright line right there. I'm just adding some of these nice light blues, maybe even a purple in there, but mostly just those cool colors. There's actually going to be almost no warm colors in this painting. It's just like a few of these rocks, but the warms contrast is like key when it comes to watercolor. And so being able to have just a few of those intentional bits of warm really brings everything to life. There we go. Okay, so we got that. And then maybe we'll add just a little bit to this front, but we don't need to worry about the front too much yet. Voila. All right. So everything's looking a little bit more like a painting now. You could stop here if you wanted to. I would not, but we're gonna kind of keep on making it until it, with watercolor, it usually comes to life in like the last few strokes. So it shouldn't look great to start. You always kind of want it to like really come together in the last bit. It's like a race. You really want like the last, you want to pull ahead in like the last little bit, not at the beginning. So this is a great start. The next thing we're going to do is kind of work our way slightly darker back to forward again, waiting for things to dry. It's this kind of funny little puzzle here. So the next step, I'd say, and this is going to be interesting for your iPad, as I wonder how watercolors work kind of with that. But the next step is to kind of,
I have to say.
Yeah, but it's the same kind of idea to some extent. You're kind of still cutting with the dark colors, but while stuff is a little bit wet, and this is where it's going to get messy and fun, we're now going to work our way kind of on these dark sides, and they're going to bleed a little bit in, which is going to be great. So I'm actually going to load up on color here, not just like what I had. That's a little bit too blue, so yeah, I'll mess with whatever this is. This might be something called indigo, or like, I don't know. I'm pretending to know colors at this point. I really should with how much I paint, but I do not. Maybe purple, actually. Maybe we'll mess with some purple. And this is way too dark, so I'm just going to get a little bit more water in there. And then what I'm doing is I am just kind of adding right to the edge here, and I'm not adding too much. I'm just letting the color do a lot of the blending itself. Once again, this is probably too dark, but watercolor does dry lighter, so that's going to be fine. But I'm just kind of letting the color is going to blend itself up. So if I do just a line while it's still wet, right there, my mountainsides actually slowly shrink because I keep on kind of cutting them down a little bit. It's going to keep on bleeding and mixing for another minute or two, which is really cool. Some people like to do just one wash and then be done, and then let it dry and then do another wash. But for me, I really love these kind of, they're called blooms, is when the water kind of just like makes those little river delta patterns. So just a few more there, maybe. And you can kind of see this mountain is really coming to life, slowly working our way down this shadow side. There's probably like some theories and some formulas of like how to make a mountain look realistic. And I'm sure they're very different as well in the lands that you're seeing, observing, sketching. And the only real trick to painting is to paint a lot. So there is formulas, but what matters is that you do a lot of it. You'll get much more comfortable, and then it kind of, you almost don't think about it. It's almost like you're just observing, and then your fingers kind of know what to do. It's really a muscle. So we've got some kind of cool looks right there. You can always blend with just pure water as well. So maybe you want kind of a cool effect. So I'm just grabbing some, like, this is just water on the brush, but then I can kind of paint with the water, and then I can connect my water to the watercolor that's already there and let them just kind of play a little bit. The more these kind of mix, the cooler it gets. And it feels, especially at this stage, maybe like it's a little bit too much, but I love it. I love just like that messy look. And I think a lot of the trick with that is just confidence to know that it's going to look great, because it will. All right, so we've got kind of some cool back mountains there. A neat thing, oops, making a mess. A neat thing with mountains is there's something called atmospheric distillation. There's your Scrabble word of the day. And what atmospheric distillation means is that the further off something is, the more atmosphere is in between you and it is going to be lighter and bluer. So that means that like these nice light blue mountains are perfect. But as we get closer, we want to kind of make stuff a little bit darker and less blue. I didn't do a great job with this one as it's like much darker and then it gets lighter, but it's something that you can kind of think about, even if like you're painting, you know, Uluru, or like you're really doing something that is not blue at all. The further away something is, the lighter and the bluer it's going to be. And in this case, we're just going to try to get a little bit darker. And here's where it gets fun, is because if we make it too dark, then we're kind of going to lose all this fun white. And so we really want to be bold and like kind of cautious here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a big brush full of, I don't know what this would be, probably something blue. And I'm just going to kind of get it all down here. And then I'm going to use water to kind of try to pull it up a little bit. So this is my loose plan. It's probably not going to work because that's how watercolors are. And you just kind of go with the flow, literally. But I'm going to grab a bunch of purples and maybe some dark, I don't know if that's black, and maybe that's like a indigo or something. I don't know, a bunch of cools. And then I'm going to really cut this edge right here and really make the edge of this mountain. And you can see it's going to feel really dark, really crazy, but that's okay because watercolors do dry lighter. So it's better to be bold than to kind of like keep on doing wash after wash after wash. We've got that right there. And then we've got another kind of little bit of an edge here. And then maybe something that goes a little bit over here. Let's use the rest of this up while we're at it. And so that's still wet. The paint is still wet, so we're still working. And then I'm going to clear this brush, get some nice clear water on it. And then I can kind of paint right above it and then just loosely connect the two. You could also put this water down beforehand. Sometimes that works better with the paper. Actually, maybe that's what I should have done. You kind of have your water placed down and then you put your nice dark wash and let the water bleed into that. That's a little bit of what we were doing earlier. And that's actually what I'm going to try to do now, because you can kind of see it's not really bleeding as much as I want. So I'm going to go back in there, maybe try that again. Unless like maybe you have a different paper, but if yours is working for you, go with it. But I just want that nice dark kind of shadowy valley that's happening right there. I can like feel the coldness. My fingers are like, oof. But there's also every landscape comes with its own challenges, which is really cool. So if you're painting a really dry, hot place, then you don't really get this wet on wet very easily. It'll just burn off really quick, which leads to really cool impacts on your watercolor. So the place you're painting is always going to impact, and it's fun to embrace that. Okay, so we got kind of some cool looks right here. Maybe just like a few more. With watercolor, it's often like you only notice the first half of your painting is to make it, the second half is to ruin it. So I try not to overwork things, and I'm not very good at that. So usually I will keep on painting until I notice that I've ruined kind of the nice thing that I had going. So I'm going to try to leave it right here, see if I can. Nope, just a little bit more. This is the hardest part, is just the confidence to be like, this is fine. Okay, so we got some nice dark centers right here. Maybe we'll even put a little bit one here, make a little valley out of that. And then some great lighter backgrounds. So the next step, once we're kind of all feeling good on that, we should be good. I should really stop myself right now. This is, like I said, I have a problem. Okay, now we're good, I think. Great. Somebody cut me off. So now that we have a pretty solid like foreground here, the next step is these little hints of let's see, how do I do that? These little hints of this kind of brown. There's like these nice sort of rocks that really catch the sun in a cool way. And there's actually a bit of a field here too. So if we wanted to add that in, now would be the time while it's still wet. So we could always do some of that. But the brown rocks are going to come in before these really dark shades down there. But we don't want these dark shades to bleed into the brown rocks. So it's kind of this weird little chess game of colors. Our little person will add in last. So the next step is going to be to add these little splashes of something warm. It could be brown, it could be orange, it could be red. So long as it's warm, it's going to look good. That's what really counts. So what I'm going to be doing here is I might actually even put a little bit of a splash of something brown down here, just to you can see it's mostly water, but I might just add just like a little bit just to get that pop of color. Like I said, I really like it when stuff is just this fun watery mixture is just a lot of fun. If you wanted something that's not super watery, much more controlled, acrylic is really cool in that way as well. And a lot of people love acrylic, but watercolor is watercolor. And if you can lean into it, it's just a boatload of fun. And it's non-toxic, and it's not plastic, and it's like all natural ingredients. So there's my pitch. I'm sponsored by Big Watercolor. I wish. Okay, the next step is we're going to add some of these little tiny bits and hope that they don't bleed all over the place. I'm going to use this color brown, which is probably a name. I don't know what name it is. Back in the day, you could get a color called mummy brown, which a lot of artists use. A lot of the famous paintings use mummy brown, and they would get it by grinding up mummies. I am not kidding. I guess like mummified human is like great brown oxidization. So Egypt had like a ton of mummies and they'd grind them up to make paint. This is not mummy, just for the record, this is mummy-free brown. And I'm just gonna add a few little highlights here, especially on these edges. Nothing wild, but just all it takes is a little bit of pop. Watercolor loves contrast. Let's see, I think we had a few more in there. Yeah, so maybe a few more, especially on the edges of these shadows, because that's what makes those shadows, is you kind of have these little rock lips that are sometimes on the edge of a little ridge, or maybe their tiny mountain range on themselves, but just a little bit in there. And you can get messy with this too. If you just want to kind of, this is called dry brushing, when you have like mostly paint and less water and you just kind of drag it across like this. That's dry brushing. This is a fine thing to do as well. Creates a really cool texture. So we've got little bits of this rock, and it won't look ready yet because we haven't put the shadow in this rock. So you're really kind of thinking about the physics of what you're looking at as well. And we had some rock in here as well. And so we're gonna kind of put a little bit of that. We haven't shadowed this in yet, which might have been a mistake, but we're gonna make it work. So we're gonna add just a little bit of this nice light sunny rock right to the edge of that shadow. Maybe even another kind of down here, and we're gonna carve that up, you'll see. There we go. Voila. Pretty nice rocks. Another cool thing you could do if you want to like just wild fun halfway through the painting shenanigans is you can get kind of a little bit of watery paint here, and you could just flick it on your page, depending on like how messy you want this to be. Sometimes you do this right at the end, and we're going to paint in this guy, so it's okay if we don't mess it up too much. But I've got just some brown here, and I'm just going to kind of do some little flicks just to get a little bit of details while it's still kind of wet. Should make it kind of interesting a little bit later. I'll show you. We can do this again later with darker, but right now I'm just doing it. It's kind of like light, pretty watered down brown. So it's kind of an interesting little effect. Okay, onward and upward. The next steps are going to be these dark bits of shadow. And let's see if I can focus there. And the issue is that if we put a dark bit of shadow right here, it would immediately go basically eat this bit of brown, which would be cool looking maybe, but we kind of want to preserve a little bit of that. So here's sort of the chess game that we're playing, is we don't want our watercolor to blend too much yet. So we're gonna have to wait for it to dry a little bit. And while we're waiting for it, we can do two things. One, we can add more water. It's called a bloom. And what a bloom is basically you have stuff that's kind of dry a little bit, but then if you put, I don't know, just this is just straight water. And if I put like some straight water right there, you can't really see it. Also, I'm frozen, but like it will add these wild little kind of, I don't know, it looks like a river from above maybe. So I have some water that's just almost dry. I think it's called velvet is the term, but I'm just adding a little bit to kind of let it bleed around. So that's one thing we could do while we wait. But the other thing is to play with some of those details, which is I think how we're going to try to mess with this right here. So we need some of those shadows. That's going to mess with our cliff. So while stuff is still brown right here, it's still very wet, we're going to paint around it. We're not going to let them touch. It's like a super conservative dance or something. We're just like, we're leaving space and we are moving around. We don't let them touch yet. We're going to let them touch eventually, but we're just kind of adding some little bits of shadow. Again, a lot of bits of shadow over here because there's nothing to mess with. And then right at the right moment, we will let them touch, and then they can kind of bleed into each other just a little bit. So now I've just got some water and I'm just gonna kind of fill those gaps in, and you can kind of see the brown is fighting with the blue. It looks cool. It's kind of a cool little look. Watercolors are so personal, but no matter how controlled or of a style you're able to use, the watercolor is ultimately going to decide what the watercolor is going to do. So the only thing you can really do is just have a lot of fun while doing it and just keep on painting, because maybe you don't like how this one turned out, but if that's the case, you learned a bunch and you can redo it. Exhibit A, I don't know if I love how this is looking, but I might later on. So you never know. Okay. So we got kind of a cool looking beginning here. This nice dark section is looking really moody and kind of cool. And we need to wait for this to dry just a little bit before we add those dark edges right on the back and the sky. So in the meantime, we're halfway through the painting. It is time for our little person, I think. With the little person, you're gonna see in this scale, it's very, very small, very wee person. So for the most part, I don't like drawing people. People are very scary, and I don't like faces because they're just like very easy to mess up. So I make tiny little people. Oops. I make tiny little people because it gives a sense of scale, but also because they're much easier to do. So for me, I do a tiny little person by, let me just get my pen here. So what I do is there we go, sheet of paper. System focus there is basically a little head on almost like an upside down exclamation point, and that's basically a person. So you add a shadow, you basically have a person. Maybe you add a little bit of a backpack, maybe you add a little bit of a leg going out front, maybe an arm, maybe another little arm, maybe some hiking poles. Boom, you've got yourself, that's way too big of a head, but you've got yourself a little person kind of from an upside down exclamation point. So it doesn't need to be super fancy, and the less sure you are, the smaller you can make them. But what I'm going to do right down here is I'm going to make one or two little tiny people. Oh, I guess I'll focus. So I've got a little tiny head and a little body, and then maybe some little legs. And we'll give them a backpack or something and some little hiking poles. And boom, we got a little tiny person, and we'll give them a friend here as well. So with people, they kind of give this really great sense of scale. All of a sudden you can realize just how huge those mountains are, because you know how big that person is, and you know how big this hill is now, and this hill is smaller than that, and that is smaller than that. So it really kind of makes everything look huge. It's a really fun way to give some perspective. But what we do with people, now that we have them loosely penned out, is we're going to add a cast shadow. This is when you really need to kind of know which way the sun is coming from. Shadow is here, light is there, so sun is coming from here. So I'm just grabbing a little bit of whatever this is, kind of something light bluish, and I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow about 90 degrees from the feet. and all of a sudden those people are looking awfully realistic. So that's all it really takes. And then we'll fill them in later once that is dry, because we don't want to add too much. Otherwise, if we make their like legs red or something, then the shadow will be red, and that is not the most realistic thing in the world. Not that this is, but that's fine. So let's see, we're about halfway through. Any questions so far?
No questions.
Just
Yeah,
praise.
definitely add red to people because it looks like they've been injured on the mountain slope.
That's
just a tip from Elle.
That's fair. Yeah, maybe we make some yellow people then.
You might need to draw a helicopter then.
We could do that. Yeah, we have a whole sky, and we're going to fill this in though a little bit later. We're going to make a stormy sky. So we're halfway through a painting right now. This is a solid start. The thing to know with watercolors is the longer you spend on one, the better it won't be necessarily. So we could spend another 3 hours on this, and that won't make it any fancier. With watercolors, it's almost like numbers. So like I'm pretty good at painting. Where's the sketchbook? Sorry. Like this is about a month for me. So when I'm moving, it's like about one of these per week. And these are from Australia too. How exciting is that? But like for the most part, it's, you know, as they're fun paintings, but the more you do, the more efficient you're going to become. What do we have in this one? Oh, here's some puffins. But like the more paintings you do, the more efficient you're going to become, and the more efficient you become, the quicker these are. So this sketch might have taken me, I don't know, 20 minutes, but it took me about 2 or 3 years of doing sketches like this. So wherever you're at in your painting journey, the trick is to just do a lot of it. Oh, here's some bears, because it's all about efficiency and kind of doing something, I guess, with a lot of confidence, which just takes time. So the important thing is to do something and paint something that you like to paint, whether it's flowers or, you know, I don't know, this is all marine debris, so not the happiest thing on earth, but whatever it is, so long as you like painting it, you'll keep on painting it, and the more you paint, the better you'll get. So there's my little encouragement there as we are halfway through this painting. But this is hopefully the first of many. And I know that you're all doing great right now. So the next step is going to be on this one, and this is just a pretty basic landscape. Little earthquake here, it's man-made. So the next step is going to be to add some of these darker sections, and then, or we could also mess with the sky. So I don't know if any preference, sky or dark shadows.
Sky.
Sky. I'm hearing sky. Sky. Okay. All right. Skies are great. They're a major confidence booster because they always look phenomenal. So with the sky, you can see there's this really cool looking, just kind of wild cloud thing. And we're going to do a stormy sky. And so with stormy skies, we're going to put water first, and then we're going to put some dark layers right here and let them bleed into the water. So what that's going to look like is just getting some water. I'm just putting like a line, you know, somewhere in the middle maybe, and then maybe a line somewhere above. Nothing too wild. You can't mess this up too bad. Voila. And then I'm going to load up maybe a bigger brush with some more water than normal. And I'm going to get, oh yeah, this is called lamp black. This is one of the few like paint colors I remember, because I always think like I do not have any black lamps, but or maybe it's a person named like Lamp who came up with this. We'll add a little bit more. Anyway, this is the darkest color I have. I want a stormy sky. I like them. So I'm going to put some right up to the edge here. I've been painting up to the edge of that line this whole time. So I'm going to put my sky right up to the edge until it hits that water. So, whoops, already messing up. Right up to the edge. And you can see it's kind of touching that water and doing some fun stuff already. Skies are scary because you have to do them pretty quick. There are no hard edges in the sky, rarely. And so the trick is to just kind of keep on going quick so that it's all wet on wet. I don't feel like I have enough water, so I'm just going to add some more down here just to really encourage that sky to do some cool sky things. But you can also overwork it really easily. So doing it confidently, but also quickly is kind of key. And so now we've got some cool water doing all of that. And it's just a matter of painting right up to the edge of these mountains. You're carving them out and just making a really cool ridge line, especially with these snowy mountains that are going to be really nice and in contrast. And if you accidentally, like I just did, lop off a good chunk of your mountain, that is totally fine. Those back mountains don't matter. Nobody cares about them because they're far, far away. Boom. So you can kind of see we've got like a little bit of this cool bleeding action going on, but it also just brings these mountains to life. And that's what some good contrasting sunsets do, is you just have this like light glancing in at this really cool angle. I am butchering the skyline, but that's fine. There we go, keep it dark. And just add a little bit down here. Awesome. For everybody who's stuck with this so far. And then we just make sure it's connected to that water. And we're done. Boom, sky. Maybe. Now it's time to ruin it, right? First half is to paint, second half is to ruin the painting. Never forget the second half. Okay, now I think we're done. So for all of you not painting on an iPad, you kind of got to wait a little while for it to sort of do its thing. For those of you who are painting on an iPad, you can always erase, which is kind of a nice feature. You could do that in real life as well. This is a bit of tissue paper. I have it kind of wadded up. If I want like a cool look, I can kind of dab it a little bit. And all of a sudden we get these kind of nice, fun, random looking hard edges. So that's a fun way to do it. It's just kind of a little bit of like a watercolor eraser, so long as it's dry. And you can also do this later. Like say you hate this, you could kind of wet it and then take this and kind of dab it until it disappears a little bit. For instance, like this right here is still kind of wet, and bam. Now it is slightly lighter, but oftentimes it kind of stains. So it's very hard to go back like that. So there's a sky, which is pretty cool. So we're getting there, and you can kind of see it's really developed a lot in the last, what's it been, like 40 minutes. So this is great. But we're almost there. Like I said, watercolors are like the last two strokes, and all of a sudden it like becomes alive. And we're about to do those right now. And that's going to be the shadow right kind of here. I didn't even do that here, so maybe it doesn't matter. But like the last little shadows are what are going to bring it to life. And that's because we are like adapted to see contrast. And so the first thing you see in a painting is the bit of contrast. If it's a black painting with a little bit of white, you're going to see the white first. If it's a pretty white painting with a tiny bit of like dark, that's what we're going to see first. So here's the pressure if you needed it. And what that's going to look like is I'm going to get some more of, I don't know, whatever this color is, kind of lamp black, maybe a little bit of this, darks. And I'm going to especially pay attention to right here at the edge of these, because that's going to be kind of cool. And I am going to kind of paint in, at this point, it's probably like those rocks is what we're painting in. So I'm just adding a little bit. Maybe I should make them a bit lighter in the back, just because they're kind of further away. But I'm trying to avoid this up here, because anything I do that touches the sky is going to bleed into it now. We're just doing a little bit back there, a little bit maybe up here. You don't have to do too much, but especially right at the shadow side of these rocks, that'll bring those rocks to life. Maybe a little bit down here too. And this is a great time for that dry brushing. So kind of where you rasp your brush over the paper, because you can kind of get those like really, I don't know, they look like a debris field almost, just kind of fun. Kind of a cool look, very almost acrylic. And then maybe a little bit down here. If you have any like valleys or something you want to accentuate, now is kind of how you do it. One of which I'm going to make a valley here because it's dry, so I can. So I'm going to make one of those rocks right on the edge, and then I'm going to add the dark right to it and let it kind of bleed up in there. We've got a cool looking cool looking rock. And then I'm going to add some of my dark and maybe add some purple to there, and then let this kind of seep up there. Because I can't control watercolor, but I can kind of give it the ingredients it needs to have a lot of fun. So here we go, just a little bit of these dark sections, and it's really coming to life. And a couple down here. I feel like we probably need one or two up here. But if you're wondering whether you need something or whether you don't, I would definitely err on the side if you don't, because watercolors look best when they are not overworked, which I've never been able to do. All right, and what we could do too is you can always grab a little bit of this nice dark paint, get a little more, and you could do a little bit more of that flicking. That kind of is those rocks, maybe that kind of fun, like cool, random effect of nature. And maybe if you feel like you did a little too much, you can always just kind of come back in with that little bit of tissue and just grab some of that. It might not get rid of them totally, but it might take a lot of the pigment, so it's just not quite as vividly dark. And then finally, we have our little section up here where the dance between the brown and the blue, and we're going to come in there with just something harsh, just a little bit right on the edge, just to kind of give it a good sense of closeness. And voila, we've got our rocks. We've got our far off rocks. I'll add a little bit more there just for fun, because I can't help myself. And maybe even some dry brushing. And we're almost there. And it's just this last little layer that kind of brings it to life a little bit. Or maybe you like kind of a lighter painting, in which case you leave it how it was. But now we've got these little people that are gonna bring this to life. So I am gonna paint them. I'm hearing not red. Should we do something else? Maybe some bright, some warm, some yellow, some orange. Anybody have strong feelings about the color of these two? No strong feelings. All right, ultraviolet it is then. What was that?
Just not red. Doesn't look great.
Not red. Okay, let's do yellow. I've got a nice yellow here. One will be orange, one will be yellow. So we're grabbing a little bit of yellow right there. I'm gonna do their jackets before I do their heads and pants, just to give them a chance to dry. And a little bit of orange right there. Voila. While I'm waiting for those to dry, I can add maybe a couple little footsteps too. If we're getting real snowy, we just do a little bit of footsteps going off here, back into the distance. Can't go wrong with footsteps in the snow. And then maybe they're definitely not dry there, but I'm gonna rush, because why not? We'll give them brown hair. And I'm gonna wait just a second to make sure that that's dry before I put the dark of those pants on. And now is the point where you can kind of add the rest of the little tiny details, maybe what you're seeing. Kind of step back, maybe take a look back. I can take a look back because I'm looking at a computer, which is kind of step back. But like if you're painting from here, now is a great chance to, while you're waiting for these to dry, just put it maybe on the other side of a room, at least like arm's length away from you, just to kind of see what you're looking at, because you can't really tell what it is until you're looking from far off. So for instance, I'm seeing this right here, this kind of weird little line of cliffs. I don't love that. So I want to add just like a little bit more dark. Could be a mistake, but sometimes not. I'm just adding another little splotch. There we go. So that feels much better to me. And I didn't really see that until I looked from behind. If you do too much like little work, it could kind of throw things off. But sometimes you can just add a little bit and it looks really good. So that's my two little tiny changes, but you still can't quite see our people because they don't have the dark of those legs and then maybe a little backpack. So that's something we're really going to want to do once they're dry. Okay, maybe right here even, actually, I could see using a little bit more maybe. Just add a little of this, being confident. The beauty is if you mess up a painting, you can always redo it. So the what you're really taking away is the lesson. The painting is almost a byproduct. Whether you're sketching in the mountains or at home, if you come up with a great painting, that's great. But the biggest triumph out of that is knowing how to make it. That's the biggest skill you can have. And so finally, we're going to add, I might even like dab these people down just a little bit so they don't bleed into their pants too much. Speaking of mountain accidents. So the final little thing is just going to be adding a little bit of legs. I know people wear pants that are not black, but I just need the contrast here, and then maybe a backpack. And boom, we've got just a little bit of a mountain landscape in the snow. And I like this one a whole lot more than kind of the light sketch that I did up in the actual mountains themselves. And that's totally fine. I know like this has a lot of memories, and I love the look, but sometimes you need to go up into the mountains to experience something to actually be able to capture it. And that's totally fine. I don't think that there's anything less special about not doing something in the mountains. The only difference is you know what you're wanting, you know what you want to experience when you've actually been there. But when you actually make the sketch, doesn't really matter too much to me. The last thing you could do is maybe you want to put a couple little more details up there. With watercolors, a kind of nice broad thing with like just a few details really lets your eye kind of sweep around the page. But this is all still pretty wet right now, so I'm not going to put any little birds or anything with too much of an edge because it's just going to go kasploosh. But that's loosely the process that I follow. If you do something bigger, it just takes more time. If you do something that has more, I don't know, like let's see, where's a good example? Yeah, if you do something a little bit more like this, there's my boots, and there's a piece of a hard hat that was from Japan that we picked up in Alaska. Something like this might take a little bit more time because you kind of got to do more layers of like these rocks, or something, there's some moose, something like this. These are little oyster catcher eggs. They take a little bit more sort of forethought, but it's the basic principle of it is all pretty the same. Watercolors are pretty simple. You can just add them to complex stuff is what makes them fun. But that's it. Any questions? Any concerns about how things went?
Great, let me tell you. Great for the kind of first two swashes of just, you know, the almost white, and then as soon as it came to adding detail, didn't work. But I would love, what about other people who had actual paper and watercolors? Does yours look like Max's does?
No, I think we should all do a reveal on like, well, mine's still a bit wet, but I'm very keen.
Oh, yes, please. Can I see? And the cool thing with this, and I'll switch over here, but like I could do this 100 times and none of them would look the same at all. And that's what's wonderful about watercolor. And that's what makes it so cool. It's like, you know, I could never paint the painting you can paint, even if I try for 10 years. You're like, they're all very unique, and it's really, especially your own style. Oh, sweet. Oh, it blurred out. That's so funny.
I didn't have any blue paint actually, so I had to do it with purple and green.
Oh, how fun. Wait, let me take a picture of all of this. This is great. Oh my gosh, I love these. Who said they didn't like theirs? These are amazing.
Where's yours, Madge?
Well, I didn't have watercolor, but this is mine.
Oh, very nice.
Beautiful. Okay, how do I make them not small? I want to see all these in all their glory.
I can go
gallery or something. Yes. Okay, cool. Oh, very fun. Oh, I like the green. I really like the green.
I like
one
the green
there.
too.
Anna Matilda, that's really cool looking. Oh, and then Eleanor, I love the sky, and that one turned out so good.
You did very well, Mariella, considering you're on an iPad.
Yeah. Oh, and Hillary,
I gave up with the details. But the sky was fun. Sky was a good confidence booster. You're right.
Sky is whenever things aren't going well, paint the sky. It makes the world work. Let's see. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, I can also send a picture of this. I can just take a picture of this and send it to the group. But yeah, for the most part, watercolors they're all about just adding yourself to it. You just got to sort out the basics. It's going to be really scary, especially to start. Nobody likes starting painting. I've been doing it for 20 years and I still struggle every single time. Like every single time I open the page, is this giant blank page staring at me. It could be the best painting of my life, or I could totally mess it up. And as soon as I make the first brush stroke, I do mess it up. It had the infinite potential, and then you make a single painting stroke and it like loses all of that. But the trick is just to keep on doing more of it and really incorporating a lot of yourself and where you're at into it. And watercolor has the potential to change the world, whether it's just how you see the world or how other people see it. So I hope you all keep it up. I assume a lot of you are actually already artists already, but I can't wait to see what you're doing. And if you have any questions or thoughts or worries, feel free to send them my way.
Yeah, I am. I'm an artist. Yeah, I do stuff. Yeah.
You are an artist, Maya. I've seen your stuff. It's good.
Thanks, Sam.
But, like,
yeah, thanks.
I don't have the answers, but I've made most of the mistakes. And that's what it's about, is like just becoming more and more efficient.
I do just have a question about like paper weight and like texture. Do you have a recommendation in terms of rough texture or smooth texture, or what kind of weight actually works best? Like 300 GSM or
how many years do you have? I love paper
3
so
minutes.
much. Oh, it's dangerous. Like, okay, so right here, like, oh, you can't see it, but this is all paper. I love paper. It's just, you're gonna find the paper that you like, and it is the best. It is like a drug habit would be cheaper than the amount of paper I go through. And so like it depends. I really like Arches, which is pretty fancy paper, and the heavier it is, the more it feels like what's something huge I've done. Like a lot of the really big sheets I use for the outdoors are really heavy, just physically they can handle it. But this is hot press, which means that it's really like smooth, and you get all of these really cool watercolor effects. But cold press it's really grippy and has a tooth. So I used to be just cold press. You can get it in blocks too, like really it's kind of glued together, and I'll basically just like rip the sheet out. So once it dries, it won't warp. But yeah, with paper, it's just kind of fun to experiment a little bit with all of it. Cold press, like 300 gram is kind of the basic watercolor paper. It's hard to go wrong with cold press 300 gram. But if you have time and you have some paper and maybe you can get a sample. I know Etcher is an Australian company, and they have these. I think they'll send you one for free if you're at an art store. It's just like, it's like a little envelope with like 4 types of paper. A lot of paper companies will do that. And you can just say like, hey, do you have any paper samples? And they'll be like, yeah, and they'll just give you a bunch of free paper usually. And you can kind of try it all out. But I used to hate hot press. I really like how it feels now. I used to think rough was like really hard to get those details, but if you're doing anything that you want to scan, you use hot press because it doesn't have shadows when you scan it. But if you want something outdoors, you use cold press because it's more stronger. But yeah, I love all the different types of paper, and that's a great question. It's just a fun tool. Watercolors are so simple, but if you keep on doing it, there's like all these amazing little differences that can just change how it is. And I'm not even talking about like the different weather and the different places and the different styles, but it's a really cool way to capture the world. And we need more people doing creative stuff like watercolors to be able to visually share the world to everyone who's not too analytical.
Hey, Max, have you ever made your own paper?
Yes, like not well. I mean, you can make paper out of like elephant poop and stuff. So I don't think there's many barriers to it. But like a lot of the paper companies have been doing it for like hundreds of years, and they've got it down. So they've also figured out a way to like extract huge amounts of money from me. So they know what they're doing. Like a big sheet of Arches is like $30. Like those huge sheets, it's like $30. And if you're thinking that the terror of opening a single sketchbook and like, making a mark on it is like here, as soon as you have like a $30 sheet of paper, it's just like, like way different. So that's been the current struggle for me. Is this winter I'm not traveling. Maëlle and I used to like travel all over the world, but like this winter I am not traveling far. I'm going to stay within an hour of Anchorage and instead of like traveling huge distances to take a bunch of pictures, I'm going to stay within an hour of Anchorage to make one single painting every trip on a huge sheet of paper using vodka so that the brush doesn't freeze and so that I don't freeze. So that's my current plan, is to appreciate the amazing things in my own backyard. But the beauty of the internet is I get to live vicariously through everybody else. So I want you all to sketch, and I also want you all to send it to me so I can live vicariously through your travels as well, because Australia is a really amazing place as well.
We'll get you out here soon, mate.
Please. Or virtually. It all works.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. That's true.
I've got a quick question, Max. Is there any way to, like, apart from using more, is there anything you can add to your water so it doesn't dry as quickly? Like if it is like super hot?
That's a really interesting question. So the reason I use like vodka or moonshine is because this will not freeze and it evaporates really quickly. So it's like you can use glycerol alcohol and stuff like that. I have never heard of the opposite issue. Which is
I'm thinking, summer, if you're like outside and it's like 30 degrees, you won't be able to get that same, I guess it'll just be a different kind of paint, like effect, like you said. But or maybe you just like use a huge amount of water. There's some like really cool brushes you can use. Like this is called a something brush. I don't actually know, but like this is, you could fit like a half a glass of water in this basically, and maybe that's what it takes. But the cool thing is the landscape is going to affect, you're right, like all of that. Maybe you have to like paint with aloe vera or something, but there's probably nobody doing that. Like there's like 6 people that paint with vodka in the world because nobody's stupid enough to paint, when it's negative 30 degrees outside. So it makes, I'm not the best of them. I'm just like one of the dumber ones. So it definitely makes it unique. So the trick is not necessarily to be the most photorealistic artist. I think the trick is often to be the most creative, or at least perhaps the foolishest.
I think that's what makes a lot of your artwork amazing, Max, is that, obviously you've got an incredible skill, but you just do it anywhere. Like you do it on top of a mountain, you do it on the side of a beach, you just like do it on a boat, you'll do it on like anywhere, you'll just whip out your kit and you'll just start painting. Like, and I think it gives perspective, like, of places that people don't normally see through a painting, because no one's pulling out their watercolors or whatever on the side of a boat when it's jumping across the sea. Like it's I think that's what's so awesome, mate.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean that's true, and it's I'm kind of curious what people are using now, because the most important watercolor set you have is the one that you'll take with you. It's something I heard somebody say with cameras. So Mael and I did a bunch of filming with like some big brands for running. And one of the best advice I got with that is the most important camera is the one that you have with you. So we would be filming with like little tiny GoPros, like these things. And the competition would be filming with massive, like $50,000 cameras, but they couldn't run with the athletes like we could with these little tiny ones. So we'd get the cool shots. And they weren't 8K or whatever, the crazy frame rates, but like we were there. And it's the same with painting. It's like if maybe you're not the fanciest painter, you don't have like the best, paints or the best paper or something like that. But if you are there and you are making a sketch, no one else is, you are the best artist there. So no matter where you're at, just opening the sketchbook, making a painting is half the battle. But you'll be surprised too, especially if you take a picture of your painting in the place. The landscape does the heavy lifting for you usually. So I would challenge everybody to try that, is just make a sketch somewhere. You're going to make a sketch. It's going to probably be somewhere beautiful. Oh, look at that. Cool. What? No way. What is that thing?
That's a pterodactyl parrot, mate. They'll kill you in about 2 minutes.
No kidding. Look at the shape. It's like a color. It's red. What kind of a bird is red?
Yeah, it's poison. It's red because it's poisonous.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Flirting with death.
Holy
cow.
Yeah, Hillary's been bitten so many times. She's immune to it now, but they're deadly. Yeah.
That is the most colorful animal I've ever seen.
So deadly. Yeah. That's what they use to ward off and other animals. Yeah.
The rainbow lorikeet. That's even colorful. Look.
Crazy, bro.
Wow. Oh man. Yeah.
Australia, mate. Australia.
the fact that none of you are painting that right now, I'm upset. Like that is the craziest. Man, your palettes must be crazy here with what you got to use.
That's not even like the birds and the landscapes. Yeah. There he goes.
What? I mean, I live in a black and white landscape. Like it is like the only colorful thing is like a moose, which is just slightly more brown than the brown around it, or a bear, which is just slightly less brown than a brown moose. That's so cool. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, I hope you're all sketching cool wild birds like that. But yeah, if you get a chance, I mean, just painting's a cool thing. But if there's anything I can help with, hit me up on either Instagram, or I think I can like you can. I think you have my email. You feel free to send that out as well.
Max, you've got about 9 Instagram channels, mate, at the moment. You've got like Max Romey, you've got Trailbound Alaska, you've got Trailbound Sketches. Which one are
That's the one, yeah, Trailbound Sketches. I'll just throw all my watercolor stuff up there. But that's the trick. That's the trick to do it. And then yeah, tag me or if there's any way I can help share or promote what you're up to, or just any questions. That is literally all. That is all of it. Like here, this is. Whoop, there I go. This is me not knowing how to use Zoom. Like this is all it takes. This is my go-to. Where we go? Here we are. This is my go-to setup. So I've got this palette in this like little pouch, a pen, a water brush, a little white marker because sometimes I want to make little details, and a pencil. And then this sketchbook fits in here, and then I film most everything with a GoPro. So like that's all it takes really. And then if I wanted to get even simpler than that, I could just do like sketchbook, watercolor pencil, water brush, phone, and they're like there's all the setup you need. So it really is that simple. The missing ingredient is what what you bring to it, whether that's your own perspective or where you're at or how and why you do it.
What's the brand of the case that you use to carry everything in, the little pouch thing?
This is Art Toolkit. They make really cool. They're local to Port Townsend, I think, but they're just like a really small brand that makes some really nice. They make the palette I use as well. So yeah, there's like a little small brand run by Maria, who's really cool. And yeah, Art Toolkit is their labeling. But it really is. I saw that somebody had the cool. Actually, could everybody hold up what they're using? I'm like fascinated. If you're, what's the yes? Oh, I remember the little circle ones. Yes, I have those. Oh, I've seen those. Oh, water markers.
Yeah.
What? Oh, Hannah and Lisa are the same person.
Kind of. Max, I actually have a story for you. It's very short, but I showed my mum your Instagram maybe like 3 years ago, and she fell in love with it. And you were using these like watercolor pens that have the water built into them. And I bought a present for mum, and then we found you were doing this as well. So it was serendipity, really.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah. Really? Oh, that's so fun. Oh yeah, I don't have that many colors. That's kind of fun. Yeah, those are great. That's super cool. Oh, that's so fun. It's also so funny to see you two like as the same.
Yeah, I know. It's jumping across. Well, it's end of lockdown in Melbourne, so I'm able to see mum for the first time in months.
Today's the first day of lockdown. End of lockdown in Melbourne, Australia. So my kids all arrived 10 minutes after this workshop started, and they've all just jumped in. Which is why
I was late. Sorry.
Yeah, which is great. So yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. Oh man. Well, I hope you all do some more sketching together.
Thanks very much. It's been amazing. I've just so enjoyed the last hour. Thank you.
Yeah. Super. Yeah. Well, I appreciate any feedback too. Feel free to send that to me on Instagram or anything like that. And yeah, like I said, I do not have the answers, but I've made most of the mistakes. So if you're ever like, what should I not do? I can tell you. Because I've done it for the most part. It's it's and I've had fun doing it as well. But like I can tell you, like, don't paint when it's -20 without gloves. You can't, it's not worth it. You're gonna lose a finger. or what not to use. But yeah, well, I've got to zip out, but this has been awesome. So feel free to connect anyway, and don't be afraid to share your artwork. It's awesome, and it's a journey, and you just got to keep on doing it.
Thanks so much, Max.
Thank you so much. Thanks. This was fantastic.
We love your work,
Awesome.
mate.
Thanks,
Well,
Max.
enjoy
Very
the
awesome.
morning of the future, and yeah, let me know how the rest goes.